All right, so we're going to continue our study this week, finishing up session 6. And before we get into the reading, I want to just take a moment to acknowledge those that brought this material to us. I want to acknowledge and give thanks to Ra. And I also want to acknowledge and give thanks to the LL Research Group, especially to Carla and Don and Jim, and to all the current team who continue to carry that work forward and make it available to all those seekers who find value in this material. So thank you to our teachers, thank you to our facilitators and the guardians of this library of beautiful spiritual teachings. We give our thanks. Okay, I believe we are picking up on or at question 614. It's possible we read this one last week, but I think we should read it again. It's worth it. It's important. Is there anybody who would like to start reading?
Sure.
I would like to read.
Thou shalt read.
Okay.
I was going to say you could thumb wrestle for it, but I don't know how we would do that over Zoom.
Okay. 614. Questioner. I think it would be appropriate to discover how the law of one acts in this transfer of beings to our planet and the action of harvest. I am Ra. The law of one states simply that all things are one, that all beings are one. There are certain behaviors and thought forms consonant with the understanding and practice of this law. Those who, finishing a cycle of experience, demonstrate various grades of distortion of that understanding of thought and action will be separated by their own choice into the vibratory distortion most comfortable to their mind-body-spirit complexes. This process is guarded or watched by those nurturing beings who, being very close to the law of one in their distortions, nevertheless have the distortion towards active service. Thus the illusion is created of light, or more properly but less understandably, light love. This is in varying degrees of intensity. The spirit complex of each harvested entity moves along the line of light until the light grows too glaring, at which time the entity stops. This entity may have barely reached third density, or may be very, very close to the ending of the third density light love distortion vibratory complex. Nevertheless, those who fall within this octave of intensifying light love then experience a major cycle during which the opportunities are many for the discovery of the distortions which are inherent in each entity, and therefore the lessening of these distortions.
Okay, so since we're picking up in the middle of the session, it feels helpful to just just review what how we got into this. So it's interesting to me because Don's question is how does the law of one relate to or act with regard to the transfer of the Maldek souls? Okay, so Maldek was a planet that was a part of our solar system that that experienced destruction, planetary destruction through war. And the souls from Maldek were transferred to Earth. And I may have this wrong, but I kind of, it seems like Don was curious, how did that choice fit in to respective free will and to the law of one for the entities that were involved in transferring the Maldek souls to Earth? Seems like that was the spirit of Don's question, and that may or may not be true, but Ra instead kind of focuses on describing the process of harvest and the mechanics of harvest, and doesn't really address so much the Maldek souls specifically. But their answer is really beautiful, and it does really illuminate and illustrate some of the specific dynamics and mechanics of the process of harvest. And And just for a little added context, so harvest is basically the process of graduation of souls from one density to another. And I find this description they give to be very helpful and clarifying and beautiful also when they say in the final sentence of the first paragraph, they say, those who, finishing a cycle of experience, demonstrate various grades of distortion of that understanding of thought and action, will be separated by their own choice into the vibratory distortion most comfortable to their mind-body-spirit complexes. And there's two pieces about that that are just so helpful to me. A lot of people take issue with the word harvest. They have pre-existing connotations to that word, and sometimes that can be scary. And the clarification that it's a choice that the soul we make. Each soul makes their own choice. We place ourselves at a vibratory, at the vibratory state of ascending this staircase of light. And we stop when we're comfortable. It's just so simple. It's just so sweet. I just love that part. So any questions about this process or about anything that's said here or comments? Yuri.
Yeah, when they are talking about harvest, I cannot quote, but there are two things, like to go to the first density positive, you have to reach 51% of service. And from other side, speaking about being balanced personality, and in some way you can go much beyond 51%, as I understood. But if you are not balanced, then it's possibly you will not make a choice to transit to the next density. So what do you think about this? And once again, what is balancing?
Yeah, that's a great question. What do you all think about that? What does 51% even mean? What is 51% service to others? Why is that the threshold? What's the significance? What do you think?
That's very easy. You have to admit like a little bit more than half of your energy to service to other. Energy, attention, actions, thoughts, everything together. And what was very new for me, which I recognized quite recently, that it's not that all the time a person has some activity or leisure, that it's or service to others or service to self. It can be none of this. It can be just wasting of time, energy, and just losing this energy, and which is not the service to others and not service to self. So to transit to the next density, you have to serve a little bit more than half to others. And this is like expression of a will to which is saying like I'm the part of the whole or bigger picture. And then I'm able to go to a next density and learn compassion, which is kind of a connection to others.
Yeah.
But what is a difficult question for me to understand, like balance, what is it like to go to understand deeply what is balance and how to define if one person is balanced or not.
Yeah, it's a great question.
And please confirm whether I'm right or wrong. That a person can be beyond 51% of service to others, but if the person is not balanced, she may choose to stay on the planet and get balanced, so not transit to the next density.
Yeah, great question. Sean? Sean, did you want to reply or say something? You there? Check, check, mic check.
Can you hear me?
Oh, there we go. Now we can hear you.
Sorry, I'm having connection issues. I had a comment to add on to what Yuri said about the 51%.
Yeah.
I think so. Like, it makes me think of the tragedy of the commons, which is like common goods. If people only look out for themselves, you can't have any common goods because people will just abuse the common goods. But once you cross that 51% threshold, that's the minimum required for a common good to exist, because you're putting more, like 1% more into the common than you take out, so that the common good can still survive. That was just my thinking. Like, there's a lot of examples of on our planet where we don't don't really have common, people abuse the common goods.
Totally.
But for common goods to exist, I think it's that 51% threshold.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great metaphor. That's a really, really helpful metaphor, the commons. I want to share a thought about this too. From my understanding, there's two major things that happens in the next density. The lessons in consciousness are about love. And on the positive path, it's love of others, serving others, universal compassion, universal love. On the negative path, it's service to self, loving the self. But the other thing that happens in both directions, positive and negative, is the formation of the social memory complex. And, the social memory complex is basically awakening to a planetary beingness and knowing how we fit into that. And so the 51% to me also signifies, I mean, it's like it's just like the commons, except in a slightly more profound level. Like, if an entity isn't ready to contribute to the larger social complex that it's a part of, I don't actually think it's possible for that entity to develop. Like, everyone who's a part of that need to be kind of genuinely and authentically interested in the well-being of that whole beingness, of that planetary self. And the way we can think about that is, like, right now in third density, all the entities on Earth are basically like single-celled organisms. They haven't yet become a multi-celled organism. And if you think about our bodies made up of, however many billions of cells it is, if our cells weren't like in the mode of like contributing to this body, the body couldn't persist. Like, the reason our bodies are so exquisitely capable of holding us and carrying us through life is because all of our cells certainly are, they're 51% or more capable of and willing to contribute to the organism that is our body complex. And if our cells were like infighting or selfish or, whatever, it just wouldn't work. So it's a crude metaphor, but I think it's similar. It's another reason why 51%, metaphysically speaking, is really significant as a sort of like gateway to fourth density, because that's what happens in fourth density. It's one of the major things that happens in fourth density. Nia, I see your hand. And then I just want to respond, Yuri, to the question about balance. One of the things that's tricky to me about, or from my perspective, about the threshold that Ross says about 51%, it's a moving threshold. At any given time, we're going to have a different sensibility around how we're relating to, others or the larger self. And I think that when, it's basically like when harvest happens, when the process of harvest, when we go through the process of harvest, it's our state, it's our sort of like fundamental set point or state of consciousness or state of being in relationship to the wider universe and to other selves. Like that's when it matters. Like as we're going through life, I think that, you know, if we were to be able to see or test our what percentage of service to others are we, I'm sure it fluxes and changes over time. And I think the balance comes in, the more balanced we are, the less flux there is. The less, you know, like if we're really imbalanced, we might swing wildly to like, okay, today I'm feeling really bright and good, and I really am going to show up for my community or for my family or for whoever. But if we haven't really tended to our own healing process and our own sense of being seated in the body complex and the mind complex and our own spiritual beingness, then it's probably going to swing, you know, like where we are relative to 51% or whatever, probably just swings a lot. So I don't know. It's a really interesting question, Yuri. And I don't remember Ra saying that you could be higher than 51%, but if you're not balanced, you won't graduate. I'm not sure I remember that part, but I do think that they say over and over again how important balance is, as opposed to just trying to like open up the third eye chakra or just really trying to open the heart chakra. Like if you haven't tended to balance of the whole system of mind, body, spirit complex, it can be problematic.
I probably recall more correctly. They don't speak in terms of harvest, but they do speak about in terms of like you can be where you can have higher activated centers, but unless you are balanced, like it will not help. Kind of this, which for me is maybe I'm wrong that. The activation of the higher centers relates to the nearing the harvest point.
Right. That's right. Yeah, I remember that. I remember Ross says that a lot. Okay, so let's do stacks. So Nia, you're first, and then Diana.
So I get this visual with the 51% of like a scale in balance. So there's a difference in balance versus harmony. Balance is literally what we think of with the scales. Weight tips the scales and it's out of balance. It's a constant, or like walking is a constant state of balance because it's a state of motion and forward movement. It was once told to me that the heart center, the green ray, is the fulcrum point, like a seesaw, for the lower chakras and the upper chakras. And so what would take the lower three and the upper three, so to speak, and have that evenly balanced, what makes it tip into positive path is the green ray heart space. And that is service to others in the positive path. The difference being what you were saying about fluctuations is, I think it was Greg Braden had said this in one of his shows one time. He's like, you know, the difference in balance and harmony is that balance is that even keel, whereas harmony, you know, he says the coyotes on his land in the spring, there's rabbits everywhere. There are way too many rabbits. That is not a balanced scale for rabbits versus coyotes at all. But by late summer, the numbers of rabbits have gone down and the number of coyotes come up. It is not in balance, but it's in harmony. So in my mind, that 51% kind of, it, you know, with the fluctuations, we learn, we grow, we evolve. That's part of soul's growth. And we have the opportunity with that heart space to, in service to others, to tip that scale of balance towards the positive. Just like we were talking about with the yin yang, you know, this week, and the upward and downward spirals and the secret of light and all of that, how that ties in balance, everything being in balance versus being in harmony with fluctuation. And that's part of our free will distortion that allows us to even have that choice versus being in balance all the time, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate that. Dana?
Just speaking to what Yuri was talking about, I also, like you, Aaron, I don't recall Ra saying anything about how an entity who has polarized above 51% service to others would necessarily choose to come back in order to refine their individual balances here in third density. Because I think, Yuri, that once you've attained that level of consciousness, you really just are a harvestable fourth density entity. And it's a natural aspect of the process that if you were to come back, you would come back as a wanderer. But I agree, Ra does talk about a lot about balance. And I think that, they say that the appropriate balance for one entity is very different than for another entity. And I think I question and suspect that balance and polarity are inextricable. Like you have to attain your appropriate balance in order to polarize and make the choice. That's just my take on it. So when wanderers come back to a lower density environment, it's my understanding that they do so not only to be of service, but also to refine whatever imbalances they perceive in their being. So you can do it as a wanderer. I just don't recall Ra talking about entities being like, I've achieved service to others, but I think I'm going to hang out as a third density consciousness just until I feel comfortable with my individual balances. I don't recall that. It's an infinite universe, so maybe that happens.
Yeah, thank you. Sean?
So building off on what Diana said, do you guys remember Ross saying like you can look at the violet ray and tell if someone is harvestable, and then the violet ray is the culmination of the lower rays? So that seems to directly have to do with balance, like your harvest. So like it almost seems like there's two conditions. You have to be 51% or like 90, was it 90, 95, something like that. And that either equates or is related to, or it's a separate condition where like the purple ray has to be a certain level. And then Ra describes like to get to that level is different from negative and positive, because negative has to get there with only the bottom three rays, whereas positive can use all 7 or 6, however many, like 6 rays. And I don't know, that seems to have to do with balance and in some way of being harvestable. Or maybe it's exactly what Diana said, where like being 51% positive or 95% negative is directly equal to achieving a certain level of balance within your race.
Yeah, the way that I have taken that's a great. I really appreciate you bringing that in, Sean. That 7th ray, violet ray piece, because Rod does say, if I remember correctly, that basically in each of our violet ray, there's kind of there's a hologram of the entire 7-ray system expressing through our violet ray. So it's almost like a map. Like we each have kind of a personal map of our whole energy body that's expressed through the violet ray. And, to the higher density entities that can actually perceive that expression of light, they could tell, they could sort of read where an entity is at and what's, what the configuration of relative balance or relative open or closed or relative, brightness, etc. And all that sort of somehow expresses or shows through our violet ray, which is fascinating. It's really interesting. Cool. All right, well, let's keep moving and move on to 615. Who is willing to read? Oh, May, you were ready to jump in, weren't you?
Sure. All right. Questioner, what is the length in our years of one of these cycles currently? Ra, one major cycle is approximately 25,000 of your years. There are 3 cycles of this nature during which those who have progressed may be harvested. At the end of 3 major cycles, that is approximately between 75 and 76,000 of your years, all are harvested regardless of their progress. For during that time, the planet itself has moved through the useful part of that dimension and begins to cease being useful for the lower levels of vibration within that density. It's funny, I just saw the visual of a chalkboard that had like maybe like a million chemical like chemistry equations and things, and all of a sudden it just went like an Etch-a-Sketch just went blank. So it like and I'm dating myself by the Etch-a-Sketch, by the way, if no one knows it, if you don't know. It gets erased anyway, so the chalkboard gets erased, and yeah, and so that's the end of the cycle. That just was the visual that popped in whenever I read that. Anyway, it's kind of funny.
You want to read maybe a couple more?
Sure, I can. Questioner, what is the position of this planet with respect to progression of the cycle at this time? I am Ra. This sphere is at this time in 4th dimension vibration. Its material is quite confused due to the society memory complexes embedded in its consciousness. It has not made an easy transition to the vibrations which beckon. Therefore, it will be fetched with some inconvenience. Is this inconvenience imminent within a few years? I am Ra. This inconvenience or disharmonious vibratory complex has begun several of your years in the past. It shall continue unabated for a period of approximately 30 of your years. I didn't want to try to read that because I couldn't get it out. 1618. After this 30-year period, I am assuming we will be a 4th dimension or 4th density planet. Is this correct? I'm Ra. Yes, this is so.
Great. Thanks, May. Let's pause there.
Yeah.
Wow, there's a few pieces in there that feel really significant to cover, but I'll just open it up and see if anyone wants to comment or question on that, any of that.
Is the 25,000 / 75,000 cycle universal or just for our planet? I don't think Ra ever addresses that, does he?
I think it's galactic. I think it has to do with when a sun I guess I don't know for sure. I think the 25,000 years, in my understanding, is a processional, like a procession of the equinoxes. That is the amount of time it takes for our solar system to, what is it? Someone help me out here. The precession of the equinoxes actually is the tilt of the Earth, isn't it? How long it takes for the Earth to, the Earth's axis relative to the sun is tilted 23 degrees off of the ecliptic of the sun, and it wobbles. That axis wobbles, but it takes 25,000 years for it to do one full, one full cycle. And yeah, I wonder how universal that number is, if it depends on the planet's astronomical configuration. I'm not sure. I'd assumed it was. I don't know. I don't know how I'd formed the opinion. I'd formed the opinion that 75,000 years was a fairly durable time period for third density, but maybe not. Anyone else have thoughts on that? You're muted, May.
Forgot to okay. So Shang, I was wondering, are you saying, and I guess logically it would make sense, it would be yes, but our entire our universe, our little piece of the pie here in our system, our solar system, are you talking about the whole solar system or just Earth's rotations? Does that make sense? Were you just talking about the Earth or our solar system in general?
So yeah, Ross says third density is like 75,000 years with 3 subcycles, 25,000 years each. He does mention there's another, I think he said one of the moons. One of the moons has potential for third density sometime in the future. Like, would that also be a 75,000 year cycle? Or would that be, I don't know, like 200,000 years or whatever? Like, it's not important. I don't know. Maybe it is important. It's just a question that came to mind.
It's a great question. It's funny. I've never really fully, like, that's never occurred to me. I always took it as a universal number, but I don't know why. What do you think, Diana?
I don't know, but it is a good question because time is relative. If we're measuring time by cycles around this, by sunrise and sunset and cycles around the central sun, a planet closer to the sun is going to have a different number of days and hours in the day and all that kind of stuff. So when you're talking about years, I'm not sure that Venus would say that, well, Rod talks about that, don't they? Didn't they talk about third density, but do they ever allude to Venus having a 75,000 year third density?
Not specifically, but they did talk about their 3 major cycles within their third density and how those went for them. But
Yeah.
they didn't like date them or put time lengths on them.
It's just so fascinating because you would think that no matter what we call a year, it would need to be an internally consistent system, at least for around our sun, or maybe in our galaxy, where the amount of time that Earth has to go through a master cycle equates to a certain potential for energy expenditure of entities here that would somehow be that would somehow match the opportunity of another planet in terms of energy expenditures. And I do wonder if that has to do with like circles around the sun, because we revolve around our sun and we live by the sun and we seek the light, and all beings grow in the light. And so it's just so interesting to think how that ever could be measured. But I have a feeling that the sun, the relationship to the sun, has something to do with it. That's all I can say.
Totally.
There's got to be a matchup of potential for expended energy in order for that to be like fair. Really.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to draw on The Secret of Light. And again, I know we're still early in that material and not all of you are reading it, but Walter Russell talks about the universal heartbeat. And, he basically says that like all phenomenon in the manifest universe are rhythmic. There's cycles and seasons to everything. And the scale of those rhythms is profoundly different. The in-breath and out-breath of a single photon is incredibly fast. The in-breath and out-breath of a planet, is much longer. The in-breath and out-breath of a sun and of a galaxy, all of these things have their own living rhythms, like truly living rhythms, and they're all geared to what Walter Russell says is the universal or cosmic heartbeat. And I imagine that harvest, the harvest cycles are somewhere in that, fractal rhythm. So, a major cycle, a 25,000 year cycle for third density somehow corresponds directly to the planet's breath, to the planet's like rhythm. And in Earth's case, as far as I can tell, that's like, again, it's like the rhythm of how long it takes for the Earth to like rotate on its axis. And I'm guessing that planets that are cycling in third density must must vary in that amount of time. So I'm actually changing my opinion. I think that it probably varies. I bet it's different from planet to planet. And I agree with what Diana said. I think it's some natural phenomenon. It's not just like some arbitrary number. I think it corresponds to something very real and measurable and knowable. And in Earth's case, it's the precession of the equinoxes, as far as I understand. And now, why are there 3? Why does 3 equal a master cycle? Like, that's interesting. And third time's the charm, I guess. BJ.
I just feel like saying, I appreciate your minds. I appreciate all of you putting your thought into this and exploring these questions. And it's not, at least in this moment, doesn't seem to be something that I grok, at least in like sort of left brain, way of being. But I'm appreciating, like I'm feeling something stirring in me that's like poetry, that's like, there's meaning that's moving, that is helping orient me, that I really appreciate. So thanks for using your brains and words.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Why are we an inconvenience?
Oh, that's a
Can
great.
they elaborate?
I want to talk
on
about that. Yes.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Nia. I wanted to talk about that too.
Well, I know our vibratory complexes and whatnot, but like that one's kind of bugging me, and I can't seem to scratch that itch. I'm not sure. Do they talk about this more later, or is this the only time the vibratory complex of inconvenience is used?
I don't know that they use that particular language in other places, but they do talk about, they make the analogy, if you remember, of Earth's transition into fourth density as a labor, like it's going through the labor pains, and they're saying that the labor is not going well. The birth of fourth density on planet Earth is not going well. It needs some midwifing, some major, assistance. But if you rewind one sentence, they said, this is really interesting. Okay, so this sphere is at this time in fourth dimensional vibration. Its material is quite confused due to the society memory complexes, plural, embedded in its consciousness. Now remember, not all planets that when they cycle into third density have plural society memory complexes. Earth is very unique. It's having a very unique experience because it's cycling souls from Mars, souls from Maldek, souls from multiple other planets, souls that didn't harvest on their other, when other planets completed their third density cycle. We don't know how many necessarily. And then all the wanderers. Well, and also all the sort of like newly incarnating fourth density entities. So that's a lot of different groups. That's a lot to integrate for a planet. That's a lot to be able to harmonize and, point the needle, like Ross says, point the needle of purpose and direction in one direction. So I think that relates to it. The fact that there's a many sort of seed races or root races present seems to relate. Okay, so we've got a stack. So BJ and then Yuri and May.
Oh, and Diana put a comment. They didn't say we are an inconvenience. Yes, good point. They said that fourth density will be fetched with some inconvenience. Yeah, I appreciate looking at this piece as well. The complexity of the condition that we live within. I think it's a really helpful one to revisit and sort of offer ourselves compassion for that, for how complex the condition that we are living within. I sort of think of it as like, you know, we have the phrase like New York City is a melting pot, like people from all over the world go to New York City, and it makes it amazing and you know, vibrant, and also makes it really like confusing and whatever. And Earth is like a galactic, or at least solar system, melting pot. And it makes it really hard for us to unify, which is part of what third density is about. And I think that's the inconvenience, as I take it, is just because of the deep level of complexity of what we're all wading through in terms of trying to unify as a collective. And I also think that I've heard this expressed, that like it also makes it so that Earth is a really powerful training ground for soul lessons. And so there's like a wait list to get to Earth to like come and, you know, work out in the gym, the like spiritual soul evolution training gym of Earth. And yeah, to connect it back to the piece about harvest earlier. Let's see. The vibrator, well, I don't find that I'm connecting it so easily, but just, yeah, I appreciated reading the piece again about, you know, walking the line of light and finding the light, you know, the light that is most comfortable before it gets glaring. It just is a really helpful, again, sort of poetic way of infusing myself with like understanding what I'm here for. I'm here to, in this density on this planet, continue to grow in my ability to absorb and metabolize light. At least that's the way that or one of the ways that I am with it, to keep opening myself to the universal truth of light.
Thanks, BJ. Okay, so then Yuri.
I'm curious if you guys know something about another society memory complex, which were Mu, and Ra says they were from Deneb. Okay, yeah, like most of them were drowned due to tectonic movement, but some of them fled to different regions, and like because of the very small quantities, like they don't say it's still there. And the same about Atlantis. So like they're from some other place as well. So, and then when Raf says like what is the content of humanity, they don't mention these two complexes. Why do you think so?
Well, in the Shang just shared in the chat a quote that says, Ra says in session 91.13 that there are 13, let's see, where is it? There are 3 major planetary influences upon your planetary sphere, besides those of your own second density derivation, and 13 minor planetary groups in addition to the above. So I would guess that Deneb is one of those 13. Possibly it's one of the 3. So what would the 3 be? So we know for sure it's Mars is one of them, and Maldek is one of the major 3. What would the other major planetary influence be? Do we know?
Those who advanced from second one.
They say in addition to the second density Earth beings. So there's one other that's a major influence, and then there's 13 minor influences. So I imagine that Deneb is either the third major or one of the 13 minor influences. May? Do you still want to, did you still have a comment? Okay. Diana?
Ra was going to tell us more about Lemuria, but the tape cut out. The tape recorder stopped working, so that portion of the contact was lost.
Oops.
Yeah, they were talking about a land bridge or something where those of Mu had migrated, the surviving ones. And they also talk at one point about how those souls tended to reincarnate as Native Americans.
Mm-hmm.
And I think others, they may have said South, I don't know. But anyway, they did make it sound like they hung around. But yeah, there's no indication anywhere of that fourth group. So anyone's guess is a possibility.
Yeah. Yep. And one of the major things to notice about the time scale of 25,000 years and 75,000 years is the contrast between third density and all the rest of the densities. So I've got a note here of the length of the densities. First density tends to be about 2 billion years. Second density tends to be 4.5 billion years. Third density is 75,000 years. I mean, that is a tremendous difference, delta, proportionally. And then in fourth density, it's 30 million years. Fifth density, they don't say exactly. Sixth density is 75 million years. So, so that's notable. The difference in how long it takes for the lessons of the other densities to unfold versus third density. It's quite fast. Third density is quite short. Even though down here, of course, 75,000 years in our time scale seems tremendously long. In the cosmic or density long arc, it's a blink of an eye. I'm inclined to keep us moving so we can see if we can get through the whole reading. So 6.19 is where we're at. We get a volunteer to read. Great, Diana.
Okay, questioner. Is it possible to estimate what percentage of the present population will inhabit the fourth density planet? Ra, the harvesting is not yet, thus estimation is meaningless. Questioner, does the fact that we are in this transition period now have anything to do with the reason that you have made your information available to the population? I am Ra. We have walked among your people. We remember. We remember sorrow. We have seen much. We have searched for an instrument of the proper parameters of distortion in mind-body-spirit complex and supporting, and understanding group of mind-body-spirit complexes to accept this information with minimal distortion and maximal desire to serve for some of your years. The answer, in short, is yes. However, we wished you to know that in our memory, we thank you. Questioner, the disc-shaped craft we call UFOs some have been said to come possibly from the planet Venus. Would any of these be your craft? I am Ra. We have used crystals for many purposes. The craft of which you speak have not been used by us in your space-time present memory complex. However, we have used crystals and the bell shape in the past of your illusion. Questioner, how many years ago in the past did you use the bell-shaped craft to come here? Sorry, I am Ra. We visited your peoples 18,000 of your years ago and did not land. Again, 11,000 years ago. Questioner, the photographs of the bell-shaped craft and reports of contact from Venus exist from less than 30 years ago. Do you have any knowledge of these reports? I am Ra. We have knowledge of oneness with these forays of your time-space present. We are no longer of Venus. However, there are thought forms created among your peoples from our time of walking among you. The memory and thought forms created therefrom are a part of your society memory complex. This mass consciousness, as you may call it, creates the experience once more for those who request such experience. The present Venus population is no longer sixth density. Questioner, do any of the UFOs that are presently reported come from other planets here at this time? Or do you have this knowledge? Ra, I am one of the members of the Confederation of Planets in the service of the Infinite Creator. There are approximately 53 civilizations, comprising approximately 500 planetary consciousness complexes in this confederation. This confederation contains those from your own planet who have attained dimensions beyond your third. It contains planetary entities within your solar system, and it contains planetary entities from other galaxies. It is a true confederation in that its members are not alike, but allied in service according to the law of one. Questioner, do any of them come here at this time in spacecraft in the past, say, 30 years? I am Ra. We must state that this information is unimportant. If you will understand this, we feel that the information may be acceptably offered. The law of one is what we are here to express. However, we will speak upon this subject. Each planetary entity which wishes to appear within your third dimensional space-time distortion requests permission to break quarantine, as you may call it, and appear to your peoples. The reason and purpose for this appearance is understood and either accepted or rejected. There have been as many as 15 of the Confederation entities in your skies at any one time, the others available to you through thought. At present, there are 7 which are operating with craft in your density. Their purposes are very simple: to allow those entities of your planet to become aware of infinity, which is often best expressed to the uninformed as the mysterious or unknown. Keep going.
That's great. That's a good stopping point. Thank you, Diana. UFOs. Have you guys seen a picture of the bell-shaped craft? Should we pull it up? I'll pull it up. So who was it? Who's does anyone remember whose sighting that was? It was, who saw the bell-shaped? I just had this pulled up the other day. Anybody remember? UFO. I don't know how quickly I'm gonna be able to pull it up. What was the fellow's name? They say some other point in the raw material who it was that took a photograph, like saw this bell-shaped craft in like maybe it was the 70s or something.
I'll just make a comment about just the Confederation. Hallelujah, the Confederation. And yeah, and the way that Ra speaks of in 620, we've walked among your people, we remember sorrow. It just is so moving, so touching to remember and be reminded that we're not alone, that there are higher density beings who see the challenge of life on this planet and who are serving as guardians and allies. Hallelujah. That's all I have to say.
I just want to chime in real quick and just say hallelujah as well. That paragraph was so poetic, and it just pulls on the heartstrings, you know. And I'm reminded how throughout this entire text, both volumes, that Ra always frequently goes back to, we understand what it's like to be in third density. Like, they don't say it in those words, but they've been there, done that. And it gives me reassurance. It so gets balm to my heart, balm to my heart.
Yeah, totally. Well, I'm coming up short on the picture, so I'll have to just leave it for now. Yuri?
I wanted to ask whether you have any idea about why the entities from the higher dimensions call entities of the third density as a brothers and sister of sorrow or in sorrow. Why that feeling of sorrow? Why not other feeling?
Yeah, that's a great question. So just to clarify, I think when I've heard Ross say the brothers of sister in sorrows, they sort of use that as another name for wanderers or those who respond to a call for help.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So I think like if like on like what I imagine it was like on Venus in third density, I don't imagine there was a lot of calls for help. It doesn't sound like it was a very sorrowful third density that they had. And so there was no need for aid. I think that part of why they say this, the brothers and sisters of sorrow, is because, you know, if entities are struggling and experiencing suffering and sorrow, that's when they feel compelled to help. Versus if a planet in third density is having a big party and everyone's like having a great go of it, they don't really need help.
That's difficult to agree. I'm not sure, but I think the guys on Venus, they had interaction with higher densities directly. There was no quarantine, and they had they was getting aid directly from the higher densities. So I don't know. So what I remember that not only Ra calls people, so to say, entities from Earth as a brother and sister in sorrow, but when there is a call for aid, for help, that wanderers come and help because they're to the brothers and sisters in sorrow. So
yeah,
why that feeling?
I wonder if there's a difference between Confederation members coming to assist a planet, and that could be through channeling, it could be through landing, versus wanderers who send souls to be incarnated on the planet. It's a different kind of work. It's a different kind of service that Confederation members offer. And I wonder if that has to do with it. Like, I wonder if it takes a certain level of calling or a certain kind of request in order to send wanderers. Now, I do know, like you said, Yuri, you know, they did have interactions. Venus and the Ra souls did have interactions. And we know that there was 2 wanderers who came from maybe 5th density or something, and then they did that funny, they were positive and then they flipped to negative kind of on accident. But I don't know, that's just a thought. I'm curious to hear what other people have to say about it. Diana, did you want to comment?
Only to say that it's a really interesting question, because I do think the Confederation comes to our aid when we achieve the doubling effect by group seeking, when we desire to know something so that we can serve the world. they answer to our curiosity. I think they answer to our collective joy in certain ways. So the word sorrow confuses me too. Although I think that when someone is asking for help, like they didn't call themselves brothers and sisters of hatred, right? They didn't call themselves brothers and sisters of fear. They didn't call themselves brothers and sisters of excitement.
Or joy.
Or joy. It's interesting. But when there's a request being made, there's the perception on the part of the person making the request that they are without a necessary good thing. They are lacking something. They could use help getting it. And the only thing I can think is that the sense of lack generates a sense of sorrow. Whereas maybe like if you're feeling just acutely angry or something, that doesn't necessarily mean you want help. So I don't know. I mean, maybe you can be sad and not want help too. I don't understand it at all. I'm now going in circles with it, but it's a really interesting question, Yuri. That's all I really want to say.
And I just looked it up, Yuri, and in 12.26, Don says, well, who are the wanderers? And in response, Ra says, these entities whom you may call the brothers and sisters of sorrow move towards this calling of sorrow. These entities are from all reaches of the infinite creation and are bound together by the desire to serve in this distortion. So it's just a subset. It's not like the Confederation members are all considered to be brothers and sisters of sorrow. It's a subset of Confederation members who specifically respond to calls coming from a sorrowful place, and they send wanderers. That seems
what I perceive, I could be totally wrong, but it's like a synonym to entities on earth. They are brothers and sisters of sorrow, in sorrow. We are in sorrow. They are coming to help us. They are not part of this sorrow. And why it's so very, this question I find very important for me, because going through the experience, what I'm going through, and many other Ukrainians, the feeling of sorrow is very strong, and it's very difficult to balance, and to find a balance between the sorrow for others and staying in a mood of, I don't know, of some beauty things and transmit it. So this sorrow thing is, I find it's very interesting and somehow very deep.
yes. Yes. BJ?
Yeah, what Nia put in the chat really resonates for me in terms of sorrow. Makes me think of separation too, that I think sorrow is an experience, at least as I relate to it, like believing the illusion of separation. And I think that's part of our freedom and our free will to get to experience that. And it's also part of our part of the deal that, like, if we want to see beyond that, which I think sorrow is in some ways a desire to see beyond separation. It's like, oh, this hurts, and it's a call out for help and support, that there are entities who will serve in that particular way. And I think I remember Ra receiving support too, or they referred to, like, their teachers came and taught them in a way that worked for them in their third density condition, that what they ended up doing didn't work in the same way for us, so I know that they received specific support from higher density beings when they were in third density. But I think there's lots of different ways that the Confederation supports, or that higher density beings support. Yeah. And also just want to share appreciation of hearing the tenderness of sorrow that I can only imagine you're experiencing.
Yeah. Thanks, BJ. Sean?
Oh, there's just one more quote that I was looking for in addition to the one you found. There was one about, and I just found it. It was about ignoring, like basically at their level of existence, they can't ignore, like they feel the pain of sorrow as if it were their own and they can't ignore it. It's from like 1418. They say, the one being of creation is like unto a body. If you will accept this third density analogy, would we ignore a pain in the leg, a bruise upon the skin, a cut which is festering? No, there's no ignoring the call. We, the entity of sorrows, choose as our service the attempt to heal the sorrow, which we are calling analogous to the pains of the physical complex distortion. So it is sorrow. Like they specifically, they're not the brothers and sisters of joy because they're specifically dealing with sorrow, which they feel as their own, so they address it, or they try to help however they can. And I guess not all entities have that calling. Like, I'm sure there are sixth density entities that focus on other services.
Right. Yeah, thanks, Sean. Diana?
I don't mean to belabor this, but I do think it's really interesting. And so my thoughts have been evolving while I've been listening to people. And I think that first of all, those of us who call for the Confederation in curiosity and joy and togetherness are doing so because we also seek for their help in alleviating the suffering of this planet. So it's like we're joining them in their mission in a way. All of us who seek together in positive service are doing so as a way to try to alleviate suffering. And I almost wonder if it would have made more sense for them to use the term brothers and sisters of suffering, or if that was synonymous in their minds, because sorrow is a pretty uniquely human third density emotion. I mean, animals feel fear, they feel pain. I can't really speak to what animals feel, but I think that except for perhaps the most evolved ones where the veil is beginning to lift, they're not having existential regrets and longings about what they wish were differently about their lives. They're just directly experiencing pain, fear, and the like. And so I think that to be brothers and sisters of sorrow is to acknowledge that there's a layer on top of all the emotions that we're capable of that involves lack, like BJ said, separation, suffering. Anybody working for positive, I don't know. I don't know if they're a unique subset of helpers or if really that term just means we're helping any human who's in a state of suffering. Okay, I'm done. I just love the question. It's a great question.
Yeah. Yeah. BJ just dropped a quote about Kuan Yin. Is Kuan Yin considered to be a bodhisattva? BJ? Yeah. Yeah, I've sometimes thought that like the brothers and sisters of sorrow are the bodhisattvas, or at least connected with them. It's very similar. Like they have no interest in going on and leaving behind those who are still feeling pain and feeling suffering, and they will stay until the work is done. It's really powerful. Yeah, and Yuri, I'm also touched by your share. Definitely pulls on my heartstrings to imagine what you and your friends are going through in Ukraine. And I know at one point Ra talks about the conditions that become available in war and how unique it is and how very, very difficult it is, and how there's also extra power available in that condition for when freedom is not available externally to us, the only way to find it is in our inner seeking, and it's extra intense, and it comes through war and domination, and somehow it's a part of the very broad array of experiences available in third density.
It is very intense.
Yeah.
I just want to jump in and say that I've had the privilege of reading some of Yuri's writing on this subject, and it moved me to tears and was incredibly beautiful. And I know that he's thought really long and deeply about exactly what you were just talking about, Aaron. And Yuri, if you're ever open to sharing that with the group, I know at one time we were questioning the relevance of that, but seems more relevant now. So I'm just putting that out there because it's really beautiful.
Please share if you're willing.
I will send a link to the Telegram group.
Nice. Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this UFO question or anything else we just read?
I have a question, a little bit back related to harvest, which is the planet graduates on its own, right? Like the planet, I don't know if the planet gets harvested or if it just naturally, like what's going on with the planetary harvest? Like, does it just mean like, what would happen if well, I guess technically, I mean, we're on fourth density now, I guess, right? Like, I don't feel like it's any different, but maybe it was just too gradual. But like, what happens if I land on a fifth density planet? Like, I guess it just wouldn't host their dense. I don't know. Like, it's a whole different area that I don't know how much Ra talks about, but like, I don't know if that's relevant to understanding like our third density harvest, but it's something that I don't really have a good grasp on.
Right. Yuri?
When Shang was talking about gradation of the planet, I recall of one quite a mad idea I had quite for some time, even before I started reading Ra. Maybe it's my ego wants to stay eternally, but somehow I believe that some entities can go beyond being just I don't know, going through the densities and then start once again over and be lost in the whole, and then once again everything starts over again. Somehow I believe that it's possible to graduate to the higher levels, like I don't know, at one point one entity, one soul, one complex can become sublogos rather than sublogos. And at one point, sublogos can become a logos somehow.
Yeah. I remember Ross saying that when an entity in third density makes contact with intelligent infinity, they are able to complete the octave and join, and like you said, join back with the sublogos.
Well, what I mean is that what the whole Ra books described is graduation from one density to another. And then when entity reaches the 8th density, which is first density for second for next how you call it octave, then the identity is being lost, and it merges with the whole, and then something new emerges. So the identity is not being kept. So what I think, what I have made idea is that for some identity who were really eager to learn, so to say, they can transit to another octave with keeping its identity and going farther beyond and beyond and beyond, and kind of someone who was a human can become a sublogos, which is a sun in our solar system. And when this sublogos will be very working hard, at one point it can become a logos and create its own universe, kind of. This seems to me logic. But I know this is a mad idea, and I never got some confirmation of this.
Mm-hmm. Right. Go ahead, Diana.
Well, I'm torn because I feel like I'm talking too much, but I also know that Shang asked a question, and I'm wondering if that's a question that seems like something we should explore now, because I maybe could try to give a quick answer. I also know that
I'd love to hear your reply.
yeah, because it's going to come up in the material, Shang, for sure. I love the question. The emanations of light from the center of the galaxy and from the center of our solar system are emanating in what Ra considers to be like exquisitely precise proportions. And after a period of what we call time, a planet will spiral into a higher density of light. So third density used to be, our planet used to be showered in third density light. Now, fourth density light is shining upon it. That light is more dense with truth. It's more dense with information about the true nature of things. It creates the opportunity for beings upon the planet to experience deeper layers of that truth. However, the beings upon the planet have to be ready. So the reason that you may not be able to take full advantage in your perception of fourth density light right now is because you're still in a third density body. Harvest hasn't happened for you just yet, right? That goes without saying. We're all here in third density. Fourth density bodies and even dual activated bodies will have the capacity to run and utilize more fourth density light than our third density bodies do. You may be a dual activated body, who knows? But what happens at that point is that now that the Earth itself is fourth density, the potential for the experience of a fully fourth density experience now exists upon this planet. Does that mean that the potential for a third density experience is going away? Not permanently, according to Ra. So look at us right now here in third. There are still second density beings having a second density experience on this planet, right? The plants and animals. They don't have a third density consciousness, even though the light shining upon them is third density light. The difference now is now that the Earth has spiraled into fourth density light and is a fourth density planet. Once the harvest has been complete and all the entities who are living on this planet belong to a social memory complex, are fourth density entities. First density will still be active and having its first density experience. That's the minerals and things like that. Second density, according to Ra, it seems, will still be active and having a second density experience. Third density is going to go bye-bye for a little while as we look at time, because the fourth density entities need to learn to veil themselves from third density entities so that third density entities can continue to have the freedom to not know what the fuck is going on. Okay, so that's like the shortest answer I can give, is that what happens to the planet is still here. There are layers nested inside one another. Outside of time, it's all happening at once. But from our perspective, once we're fully in fourth density having that experience, third density won't be here for a little while. The earlier densities will be. That's what I got.
Nice. That was really clarifying. Diana, thank you.
I'm just gonna say mic drop. And I also want to go back and listen to that part of the recording. Like, wait, say it again. Thanks.
I
Well,
want
yeah,
to
and
echo
this is-
that sentiment because I was like, there's all kinds of juicy things that we're saying, and I didn't like get it all. And I'm like, oh wait, we're recording this. Oh, hallelujah.
And there's going to be more. We're going to keep reading and more is going to come. So about this.
And the other part that they say in this session that's really interesting to me is that I'm trying to find it. They say that the energetics of Earth are no longer metaphysically like supportive or helpful to the earliest lessons of third density. So, and that's fascinating. Wish I could find it. I can't quite find it, but you all remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah, and it doesn't make sense to me. And the
Mhm.
reason it doesn't make sense to me is because they also say that increasingly a lot of entities that are graduating from second are showing up here as newly minted third density entities. So how would the early third density experience not be available? I don't get that.
Well, if they, second density entities can graduate second density and come right into like 3.3 or 3.4. They don't necessarily come into 3.1. It depends on the work they did in second density, which is fascinating. Oh, here it is. It says all are harvested regardless of their progress. For during that time, the planet itself has moved through the useful part of that dimension and begins to cease being useful for the lower levels of vibration within that density. Yuri?
I remember I was asking this question directly to you, Aaron, but I want to ask it once again. So it seems we are in transition period now since 2012. And does it mean that the souls of children being born after 2012 are only those who have dual activated bodies, which are actually fourth density entities having a third density body? Is it so, or still there are some entities born who don't belong to the fourth density?
I wish I was more up on my Quo reading, because I think Quo has been asked lots of questions about this more recently than Ra, and some pretty important information has come in response to that I don't feel very qualified to speak on. I actually was just talking to my son, my 15-year-old son, about this the other day, because I kind of had the impression that all the souls coming in now were dual activated. And then he kind of pushed back a little bit. He's like, well, I've got friends who don't seem like they're in fourth density.
Also, like the harvest is supposed to be small, right? There's like 8 billion people, 9 billion, 10, however many billion. It's a lot more than what, I don't know.
Yeah, that does seem to be what they indicated. Makizla?
Wow, that's so funny because I haven't heard my name, I haven't heard that in a while. Thank you, Moo. The quote, the Ra quote that you just read, I was trying to find it real quick, but it feels to me, because of where Earth and our galaxy is in the cosmos, that, and I'm sure that Ra discusses this, that it's all a part of the ascension. It's all a part of the sorry, I'm just trying to find how cute BJ looks right now. Oh my god.
I'm just playing with Victor. Hi,
That's
Victor.
adorable. I'm such a kid, you guys. I'm just such a kid. What the heck was I saying? So it feels like, in the Bible it says there's a great cloud of witnesses that are cheering us on, And it feels like that is also planetary. It feels like the entire cosmos is cheering on all of Earth inhabitants. Every first density, third 0.495 density, there's so many beings that are just flying in here to just support us. And I'm getting chills. So it just feels really, we know that this is a really right time to be on planet Earth. And I'm so grateful that I'm here. And I'm so grateful that we are here as the collective, to be able to shine ourselves into this soup of love. So that I had to say that. Thanks.
I appreciate that, May. That conjures a really sweet picture of all these cosmic cheerleaders silently cheering us on. We sure could use it.
I asked Victor if he was a third density or a fourth density, and he said he was fourth density. And then I asked him again just to confirm, and he replied, "I'm hungry."
Stick to what matters.
Okay, so we've got a request. If anybody does follow Quo or have any idea where to find the quotes, that'd be nice if you could drop those quotes into the Telegram channel, maybe. We have expired our time. It's 5:01, so we're complete for now. I'm happy with our progress. The final reading that we didn't quite make it to is mostly contact maintenance stuff. So we did a good job. Thank you all so much for your deep questions, your deep inquiry, your beautiful hearts, and your fellowship, being on this path together. Thank you all. Until
Thank you,
next time.
everybody.
Thank
Much
you for the
love
deep
to you.
study.
Love you, Kristen.
Love you guys. Love you,
Love
May.
everybody. This was so fun.
What a good one. This was a juicy one.
Yeah, there was.
When are you
I'm so
gonna come
grateful.
to fourth density Saturday, Kristen? Do you need that GPS directions to come down from Raleigh?
She's been here.
Yes, I do. So where is it? It's held at the
It's in the village.
In the village? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe I'll try to come up in a few weeks. That would be really great to see you guys.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, we would love that.
I would love that. Are they still doing the Airbnb in Kate's house?
No. No. Karen's
No?
house. No.
Karen's house.
But
Sorry.
there's another Airbnb I can send you a link to.
Oh darn! Okay. I'm slight disappointment there, but okay. Yes, please send that to me. I would love that.
Cool.
All right, guys. I love you guys so much. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful for all of you.
Yeah, likewise.
Mm.
Love you too,
Feel
Kristen.
better,
Good boy.
Kristen.
Thank you.
Bye.
Mwah.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Bye.
Thank you, Dana. Bye, May.